Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me thank our leader for bringing this to the floor today, for my colleagues, for their support for this common sense law that is going to help families across our state. Our current justice system, Mr. President, criminalizes poverty in many ways. One way this occurs is by suspending an individual's driver's license for failure to pay a fine for minor traffic infractions or failure to appear in court for those minor traffic infractions. Yes, driving is a privilege, but driver's license suspension should be used to keep unsafe drivers off the road, not as a debt collection mechanism. This practice wastes taxpayer money and resources only to create a two-tiered system of justice where those with means are able to keep their driving privileges and those who can't afford it are plunged into even further debt. There is also a devastating human cost. For example, in New Jersey, 42% of drivers lost their job after their driving privilege was suspended, and in Arizona, drivers with suspended licenses lost an average of $36,800 in annual income. Jobs are lost, families are devastated. The impact of license suspension for failing to pay fines is particularly acute in rural communities. Because the public transportation options are extremely limited, if they exist at all, people who live in these areas rely on their cars and driver's licenses to get to work or court or to access basic health care. Unlike New York City, where there's a robust public transit system, in upstate New York, a driver's license is a true necessity. Through this bill, we're addressing that injustice by offering a common-sense solution, a path toward repaying traffic fees without further penalizing drivers and sending them into the dark hole of debt. In a recent two-year period, New York issued more than 1.5 million suspensions related to traffic debt. Without a driver's license, people can't go to work, school, or even access health care. These consequences compound and make it even less likely that the person can repay the original fine they incurred. In other words, we're kicking them while they're down. And while a ticket for $100 or $200 may not seem like a lot to some people, for others, it can be financially devastating. Our current license suspension policy disproportionately impacts low-income people and people of color as well. Driver's license suspension rates in New York are nearly 9 times higher in the 10 poorest communities compared to the 10 wealthiest. Suspending a person's license for non-payment accomplishes very little. It does not appear to encourage repayment either. In the majority of cases, people whose licenses were suspended still did not pay the outstanding fine after having their license suspended for a year. In fact, although we cannot predict exactly what will happen in New York, when West Palm Beach County, Florida, started allowing payment plans, it saw 32 times more revenue and reduced suspensions by 39%. In San Francisco, California, revenue from traffic violations increased by 244%. My goal in introducing this bill is to get people out of this vicious cycle by allowing for reasonable payment plans so an individual can pay off their fines. And this concept is not a radical proposal. In fact, Mississippi, Idaho, California, Washington, D.C., and Virginia all have similar programs. There are at least half a dozen other states that are doing the same or considering doing the same. And what this bill doesn't do is change the reason for suspending a driver's license in the most egregious of situations. For example, you could still have your driver's license suspended for failure to pay child support, for driving while intoxicated, for vehicular homicide, and quite frankly, in the transportation law, there's about 25 pages of law outlined showing reasons for an individual who can, reasons an individual can still have their driver's license suspended. This does not keep dangerous drivers on the road. Drivers will continue to accumulate points for infractions, which could still lead to suspension. This does not get drivers out of having to pay tickets. People who accumulate fees and fines will still have to pay back that money. And there are many different ways that the state and the court system will be able to reclaim those funds. And it does not get people out of having to return to court. There are a variety of ways and tools to make sure that people appear before the court to pay their fines. Thousands of people have traffic debt they simply cannot afford to pay. And with this payment plan that we're putting forward today, people will now have the ability to pay back their debt while also benefiting the state and municipalities who otherwise would not see this money. I thank my colleagues for joining and supporting me in this proposal, and to the many advocates who have fought side by side with us in order to see this cross the finish line. With that, Mr. President, I vote aye.